Call to order the Tallahassee Ethics Board for October 19th, 2021. The time is 4 o'clock. The board members are present here at the City Hall along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Office webpage, and we are recording it for future reference. There's a delay with online communications, and we should all be patient. We thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. This time, please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Would you call the roll?
Chair, Carlos Ray. Brian Smith. Here. Tony Payne. Here. Ruby Barr. Kristen Costa. Robin Blank.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Mr. Floyd. This time, I'll review the procedures for public comment after the meeting. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. Last week, we asked the public to make a request by email to ethics@talgov.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting if they wish to speak online on an agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be given a chance to speak as scheduled. For those of you who are present and wish to speak, please complete a request form and forward it to the Ethics Officer, Dwight Floyd. Are there board members have received the agenda and supporting documents? With regard to the agenda procedures for conducting today's business, are there any questions or concerns? Moving on to approval of the minutes for September 21st, 2021.
Chair,
Yes, sir. Mr. Payne.
I believe there has been omission from the minutes. Item 13, directives. At the end of the meeting, I had requested a report for regarding our jurisdiction and responsibilities for the extra governmental agencies. Mr. Reed and Mr. Floyd have told me that they are working on the report. Not quite ready yet, which is fine, but it should be, the request should be in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. You got that, Lucy? Okay. With the recommended edits, any other comments or concerns? Motion to approve the minutes with the recommended edits.
Second.
Ms. Blank moves, Mr. Payne seconds. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. This time I'll take a point of chairman privilege. As many of you know, Ms. Gwen Graham has been called to higher service for this country, and she is no longer serving this board. I believe it's because people saw her on the live stream, how well she got on this board. She was called up to serve our country, so I want to thank her for her service. Her dedication to this board was greatly appreciated. As a small token of our appreciation, we have presented her with a plaque saying thank you for her time on this board. And we wish her the best, and hope she comes back to serve this country. And we're glad to have had her on this board. With that being said, we now have to elect a vice chair to fill her spot. I'll turn it over to Mr. John Reed to go over the procedures for this process.
Okay. Apparently I did such a great job at the election last time, they've asked me to come back. So I think last time I wanted to, before we just put a motion out and then kind of lock people out, I wanted to see if there's anybody on the board that would like to be the vice chair. Maybe before we go to a formal motion, second, and a vote, maybe just see who is interested so we don't foreclose anybody that might have an interest. Is there anybody that would like to be the vice chair?
I mean, I would.
Anybody else? Well, then I guess Mr. Payne, Blank, anybody? Mr. Ray, you wanted a motion? No? Okay. All right, okay. Okay, well then I guess just a motion and a second and then we'll be done.
Motion to approve Mr. Smith as vice chair. Motion. Ms. Blank makes the motion. Mr. Payne seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Those approved. against? Nobody. So, perfect.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That was quick and easy. Moving on to public comment on agenda items.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with Mr. Stanley Sims on the summary report.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. My comments is generic to the complaints. As you know, I'm often bringing issues of concerns that may be beyond your reach, but hopefully in one day it will be within your reach. So I share these incidents now more as an educational manner in transferring information for you all as you investigate your powers or authority within local government and as it extends to these other additional boards that you were talking about. But recently, I just want to bring to your attention that I filed a complaint with the mayor's office in reference to a city employee making an obscene gesture to me. Now, my complaint is not about the resolution or the findings of the complaint. And the reason why I bring this to you is because this board looks at processes, procedures, to ensure that the policies and the procedures that we have online are being implemented in an equal and a fashionable way. And so, when I file a complaint, and it takes almost a year, and it takes me almost 2 months to find out the resolution of the complaint. And in that finding, I was not a part of the investigation, nor was I notified the resolution of the case. And for a cherry on top, I found out that the investigation was conducted by the office in which I filed the complaint in. Let me save you time. Don't do a public records request because no documentation was made in the investigation. On yesterday, the Florida Channel just finished airing a documentary in regards to the lawsuit that the City of Tallahassee has chose to join in reference to House Bill 1. I am a part of that documentary, along with Ramon, a lot of other prestigious people. And the reason why I mention that is because these inequities that are being glossed over as Tallahassee 1, with their doors are open, words are not meeting deeds according to the class you're in. My second point is that this situation is so grave in my household I am concerned about the welfare of my family. A lot of you have been concerned about me. But things are so bad in my household. that I'm concerned about my son, my wife, and my marriage. I know this is beyond your jurisdiction, but telling this, Mr. Chair, even though it may be false, it gives me some sense of protection. Thank you.
Sims.
Okay, the next one is Ben Wilcox, I believe it's item 8A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I just wanted to point out that at the last city commission meeting, both Commissioners Porter and Matlow used the sharing of ideas to suggest that the commission conduct a workshop for the purpose of considering the recommendations of the Independent Ethics Board relating to lobby registration, disclosure, and regulations. Commissioner Matlow also recommended that the commission consider expanding whistleblower protections to the Independent Ethics Board, perhaps restricted to complaints against commissioners and officers only, to avoid overlapping with the responsibilities of the Inspector General. Banning lobbyists, the other point that Commissioner Matlow asked to be considered would be a ban on lobbyists from engaging in lobbying after conviction of involvement in honest services fraud and/or offering or paying bribes to commissioners. And during the course of the meeting, two of the commissioners expressed confusion about the role of the Independent Ethics Board. They expressed the opinion that any workshops, public hearings, and recommendations be initiated by the board and not by the city commission. However, in the end, the commissioners decided to conduct a workshop, presumably in the near future. Of course, the Independent Ethics Board has already carefully considered and has shared its recommendations regarding lobby reform with the commission. We would suggest that this board proactively work with Commissioner Matlow to consider his additional recommendations, which our coalition strongly supports. Toward that end, one of our members, Catherine Baer, has researched whistleblower powers in other municipalities, and we'll be happy to forward her research to Chairman Ray, Mr. Floyd, and Mr. Reed.
Yeah, go ahead and send that information to us. I think we're aware of the fact, I think we're going to be presenting the annual report the end of October, correct?
27th.
27th, along with that, we'll be discussing our recommendations that we presented today. So I'll be brought up to them in that meeting. Again, we'll work with any commissioner and any suggestions they have, we'll consider it. So it's not, we'll work with any particular commissioner, any commissioner, any member of the public, make recommendations to this board. So we're here for the public, and we'll consider those recommendations. And we'll see how, working with our staff here, what is the best path forward for the commission and for the city. But thank you for that, for those comments. Mr. Floyd?
Yes, Peter Basine, agenda 9.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Butzine, 1628 Woodgate Way, speaking on behalf of Citizens for Ethics Reform. I just have a quick comment. Obviously, citizens are unfamiliar with the campaign finance rebate program because so few people have participated. And incidentally, I thank Mr. Floyd for his report and for researching the whole purpose behind this important rebate program. As you know, the legislature has eviscerated the $250 campaign contribution limit, effectively restoring the $1,000 contribution limit. So the $25 rebate program is even more important because it provides a modest solution for average citizens to financially support candidates of their choice while mitigating the impact of large contributions from entities that seek special favors from local government. Unless the Independent Ethics Board, with the help of Citizens for Ethics Reform, are able to at least modestly promote this program the public is simply unaware of its existence. And I believe the first and easiest step would be to encourage candidates to promote the rebate program, and this requires no more than a letter to the candidates. While financial resources are obviously limited, this board does have a few budget line items that could be used to promote the program. They include the following 3 line items: advertising, unclassified professional fees, and I think especially unclassified contractual services. Longer term, perhaps the board might also want to consider simplifying the rebate program and the application process, and seeking additional funds for marketing the program in future budgets. Ultimately, I've learned in my 77 years of working with nonprofit organizations, it's all about marketing. And we need to pay attention to marketing if we're to get the word out about this important program. Thank you.
I think Mr. Flower discussed that and that line item, but thank you for those comments. Any more comments?
That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to office report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and guests, and those online. I know my report looks skimpy, but it's actually been a busy and intriguing month. There have been actually a couple of commission meetings where the board has been mentioned. We'll discuss those when we get to the next agenda item. We did follow up on directives from the last meeting, and one of them Mr. Payne spoke to. We're working on the outside agencies and under whose authority, if any, they lay. And I can tell you that's going to be interesting when we bring it. And I have made a request to the city commission, as Blank suggested, for the Q&As to the vendors to make sure they understand what the rules are when it comes to employees accepting gifts. So I'm discussing that with them. I conducted ethics training, and I do that every month with new employees. And as I'll talk about in a few minutes, I researched the campaign refund program. That was where I gave most of my attention this time. I did have some pleasant conversations that I'll talk about in agenda item 9. Responded to complaints and concerns. I had one individual, wasn't necessarily a complaint, but I think he just had concerns and wanted somebody to listen to. So I was that person. And then we just had the basic administrative functions that we normally have from month to month. As far as the budget goes, you have the monthly report and you have the annual report. And I'm sorry that it's so small. I was trying to get it on one page, the annual report. I think that we ended up with about almost $90,000 left from our budget. And that was after hiring someone to help us with the investigation, after spending money on courses and voiceovers and et cetera. So I think I feel that we were fiscally responsible throughout the year. John didn't break the bank. So we've all been responsible. So when I talk about the campaign refund program, I think there is a little leeway to use some funds to do some positive things with that. Are there any particular questions about the budget reports, either the monthly or the annual?
Mr. Floyd?
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, the surplus, the 91,000 goes back into the city general fund?
It just basically starts over, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
His question was that the money that was left over, does it go back into the general fund?
Yes, we don't
We
get,
basically start over at zero and with the same budget.
it's available to us, but we don't get it.
So whatever our budget started as at the beginning of last fiscal year, that's where we are now. Any other questions?
Comments?
Okay, then the last thing would be I have one complaint. I have my notes here, but I got it top of my head. A young man called, this was a citizen, he rode the bus. He had a concern about customer service, which he relayed to a supervisor, and he alleged that the supervisor then sent out a BOLO. And I know what a BOLO means, but I don't know what that means in this particular instance. But he sent out a BOLO against someone riding the bus to retaliate for him doing that. I directed him to the sworn complaint forms and told him to read material. I didn't see legal sufficiency, but if he filled out the form and gave me more information, that would be good. And from what I understand, that ended up in the hands of the Inspector General and was addressed. So if he ever decides he wants to make a sworn complaint, he can bring that to us and we can act on it. But at this stage, it's been a while, and so I suggest we just close it.
Motion to, recommendation to close this case? Mr. Payne moves, Mr. Smith seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
That's the report.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 8, old business, update on recommendations to the city commission.
Okay. And on September the 2nd, we sent to the mayor and city commission members the recommendations on the misuse of information. Misuse of position recommendation and other recommendations that was in that letter. And there hasn't been a lot of discussion on that one, so we'll have to refresh that whenever we come before them. There's been a lot of discussion on the lobbying language, which we resent after the commission approved the revised letter. We resent that the day after on September the 22nd. On October the 5th, I received a call from one of the city commission members' assistants asking if I could attend an ethics reform meeting the next day. And I shared with him that the board's position is that they would address it with the full commission rather than a public forum with one commission member. And there were political implications too, which I was very direct in sharing and told. I was uncomfortable, but that I wished him well. I did watch the meeting. It was a very good meeting. I thought you did a great job. I actually enjoyed it as I watched it. There are a number of things, and I'm going to mention these because they come up again in the commission meeting. But in the ethics reform meeting, they talk about prevention of corruption. And I think that's a great emphasis from the board's standpoint that would relate to whatever recommendations we make, such as the ones that have been making. We don't go around looking for trouble and looking over people's shoulders. That's not the way the ordinance is written. So from that perspective, we don't do that type of prevention. They talked about getting the city commission to go forward with the workshop. They talked about creating a citizens committee on ethics and involving me with that. With regard to corruption, they talked about fixing the system in Tallahassee, and they're referring to the investigation with Scott Maddox. They talked about no bid contracts in those implications, they talked about a permanent ban on individuals who are convicted of certain financial crimes, and perhaps banning individuals who committed certain crimes and which could have implications. For example, there is something called the venue get down or whatever it's called, and that was initiated, from what I understand, by someone who was convicted of financial crimes. It might have been embezzling, and so there would not perhaps be a venue get down if that type of thing occurred. And I'm just using that as an example. Auditing previous contracts involving Scott Maddox, whistleblower protections, which currently under Inspector General, outside agencies, who are they accountable to, creating penalties for lobbyists or companies when lobbyists does something wrong. Those were a lot of their conversation. Then on September 22nd, and again on October 13th, the City Commission spoke about ethics, and we were mentioned. They mentioned that the Inspector General is currently auditing records involving Scott Maddox, but he did make a point of emphasizing that he could audit that, he could audit employees, but he didn't have the authority to audit the City Commission because he answered to them. So that is not taking place. They talked about creating a Citizens Commission on Ethics and involving the ethics officer, and this is just discussion. Again, the IG's office, they're investigating statements of facts admitted to by Scott Maddox and what the city staff did. It does not address City Commission. They talked about identifying best practices for preventing this from happening again. They talked about hosting a workshop on ethics reform. And again, they talked about the lobbyist language. They talked about whistleblower expansion, and we talked about it some. It's not in our current recommendations, even though I think one of the City Commission members thought that it was. But it may be an opportunity to have discussion on that again. And then, again, at the City Commission meeting, they talked about banning or disqualifying vendors based on certain conditions. In the end, I had previously asked the city manager to allow us to present the annual report, and you should have this. This is a hard copy of the annual report, but I've asked him to allow us to present it to the City Commission. So when they had this discussion, he took that opportunity to suggest that the board appear at the next meeting. So we will have that opportunity on October the 27th to present the annual report. City Commission member Hurst Richardson also suggested that some of the other issues that I spoke to or that I reviewed in both the ethics reform meeting and the commission meeting, if the City Commission wanted to, they could ask this board to look at some of those other reforms that were discussed. So it's not something that I'm even recommending, suggest we look at now, but I'm just making you aware that that may become part of the conversation when we go before the City Commission. I think that's it for now. They did talk, they're planning a workshop. So we'll go on the 27th. They'll plan a workshop. In the workshop, we can talk, they want me to talk about the specific ordinances relating to elected officials, refresh that, and they wanted to hear our recommendations. They also are going to engage citizens at that time. So I have October 27th, do the annual report, and then a time to be determined for the workshop. And that's, generally, that's the update for those recommendations. Any questions?
A couple things. You mentioned that the Inspector General felt that he didn't have authority to address an audit to city commissioners. Was he indicating he didn't have the authority to audit Scott Maddox?
No.
So that is open to him, okay. Another thing that was mentioned in the city commission meeting was the apparent feeling that the city commission couldn't act on ethics reform without getting a recommendation from the ethics board.
Yeah.
And that's not our position
Right.
here, correct? And
Right, and I think they clarified that in the end. There was a little maneuvering going on there, but I think they clarified it in the end, that it could come from us or it could come from them. They could come up with their own recommendations.
And there's one other thing that, there was mention of combining the workshop that is still to be announced with ethics training of the commission, which I don't think is a very good idea. Do you have a position on that? Will you be?
Well, frankly, because I had this discussion with the, but I feel comfortable that they're aware of the ordinances. So a quick refresh should be okay. It won't be a training session per se. We'll just refresh what the ordinances are. Make sure, I think the most important thing is to make sure that this board and the city commission are on the same page with regard to where the parameters are and how we define what's in the ordinance. And then we will move on. That sound okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll apologize in advance. I
No.
won't be able to make it to the city commission meeting next week as I usually do. I'll be out of town. So I know you'll
hear about it.
you'll represent as well, so.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Comments? Moving on to agenda item number 9.
Okay, campaign contribution refund program. And I gave you a recommendation, and I actually have a different recommendation. I think, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but I don't think it's been on the books, but there hasn't been an effort or a commitment to really go after it or understand it. This program, or this type program, actually goes back to 2004. There's a paper, and I didn't share it with you, but I can. There's a paper that summarizes, it's a research paper, but if you look at it, it summarizes just about everything that everybody's doing across the country, whether they're doing it the way we're doing it or the way somebody else is doing it. And the main goal is to empower everybody. And I should point out that report that you got, John wrote 3/4 of it. I just took it and added my stuff to it. Thank you, John. I always take credit for his work. But the main goal, and you can help if I get this wrong, the main goal is to empower the individual, regardless whether you're far right or far left. You represent us as an organization that has been pushing this. If you see that organization, they are a mixture of people from different backgrounds, different political beliefs, but they all feel that, are concerned about how money drives politics and decisions and representation, et cetera. Most of these programs I looked at, they had two components. One of them was to limit the amount of money that's spent on a campaign. And, we're a little hindered here because we had the $250 limit, and the state has now made that $1,000 limit. In some states, you can go in, you can get money for your campaign from the state as long as you agree to a certain limit. And then that's paired with some type of refund program. The one that I was most impressed with is Seattle. And I had a conversation with two of them, and it was a very fruitful conversation, and left me with the impression that we could do something effective. Keep in mind that this is essentially a grassroots program. And when you say grassroots, what they did that I could see doing is identifying grassroots organizations, legitimate organizations, not the people that go out and say, I represent the world, but the world doesn't agree with it. But, you have like neighborhood associations, nonprofit organizations, and those organizations that are actually engaged with the community. And so they are a great source for getting the community, helping educate the community. They have to be educated first, and that would be my job. And then it's educating the community, demonstrating how they can use this program to empower themselves. And the other part is educating the candidates, not just saying we have a program and we have a form and here it is and go out and do good things, but fully walking them through how they can use this to benefit them. And as one of them spoke to, simplifying the form and perhaps even the process. Right now, you have to fill out this form, you have to get a receipt to verify that you really did contribute this, then you have to mail it in to us, and for $25. And so you have to really be motivated. So looking at it now, what I'm asking for is the privilege to identify, and you can recommend, anybody can recommend grassroots people, and then the chair and John and I can sit down and vet them and identify small groups or a small group that can help brainstorm and come up with ways to engage the community. And for example, if you want to engage the community in Southside, then you get somebody in Southside who knows the community and who people in that community that people would listen to. You sell them and get them convinced, and then they can help convince. You go out and get the candidates, potential candidates, and you share with them how they can use these resources. Because listen to some of the candidates, they are frustrated with trying to, because the money, you have to get more and more and more money to run a campaign. So I would like to give it a try from that perspective. Those are my thoughts. Yours. And
How much is set aside every year for this?
he asked how much is set aside for this.
To set aside, yeah.
How much do we have? How much is
Nothing.
that was something, where's the money coming from? No, not for advertising, I mean, the refund program. How much is set aside?
The
Yeah,
money comes from the general revenue.
how much is that? Is there a cap every year to set? Is it,
We, in our budget for
It
the,
isn't- Okay.
we have 9,000. At one time, we had it at 50,000. So every time I've had to adjust things, taking it out of there, because the most we've done is $400 and some in 1 year.
But that 9,000 and that 50,000, that's a line item that we can change, correct?
Yeah, it's what we can change. It's what's allowed in the budget, not necessarily, I have it down as amended budget, because I shared it.
9,000 for this coming election, 2022.
We don't want to give the city any money if we don't use it. It just stays
Stays right
here
there.
in case we need it for something else.
So we have 9,000, all right. And that 25 limit is set by amendment?
In some states, I'll tell you, Seattle, the first year, I think they said 2% of the population did it. Second year, 4%. The next year, 8%. This year, they've already exceeded that 8%. So that's why I'm paying attention to a lot of what they're doing is working.
I think, yeah, one of the resources we can use is supervisor elections, include that in their packet, pamphlet saying, here's, as a new candidate of the city, when you send out your thank you cards, send this with the thank you cards and a reimbursement, a voucher for your contributors. Is it an issue that the candidates don't know about this?
Voters don't know.
They,
Not marketed.
I won't say that because some of them tried to use it this last time. But part of it is us understanding how they were using it and helping them with making it effective. They, right now they probably do just like us. They know it's there, they tell people about it and keep going. But it takes more than that.
It's not marketed.
Yeah, I know one candidate in particular who used it. I can't think of her name.
Something that occurred to me, the official that's in charge of tracking campaign contributions is the supervisor of elections office. Is there any thought of working some kind of collaboration with that office to better publicize the program?
Yeah, there's probably some potential there. Yeah, just keep in mind that that part of this is reaching people who aren't even on the radar. So I'll say yes, but
Everybody goes to the election office.
Or if there was a way that, because they have to turn in the receipt from the candidate's principal campaign committee, that even if it was listed on the bottom of there, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically if I gave 10 candidates $25 each, I would spend zero money, correct? I would get 10 refunds for $25 each?
That's one.
Just one.
just one. And if you're not in the city limits, if you're not a city resident, you give all day long, you won't get anything. In Seattle does it different. They actually send out a voucher to every citizen. And then that citizen, the way of contributing is giving it to the candidate. And the candidate turns it in.
Yes, Ms. Blank.
So I think it's a great program. I support the program.
Mm-hmm.
If someone asked me, why is this an ethics board issue? What is the connection between the program and why does it belong to the ethics board? What should I tell them? Is it because the amendments were timed together or is it that there was another connection?
No, this was the amendment.
Part of the charter.
It's
Part of the whole package.
Excuse me. When the amendment passed, it was put on our responsibility to manage the program.
And my thing is, we can delve into it and give it our best effort, or we can do nothing. And in the past, it's been token effort. So.
I would vote for giving it everything you can. You had one question. The $25 limit, is that per year or per election cycle?
Year.
I thought it was per election.
I don't think so.
I thought it was per election cycle.
Well, they're the same.
No, they're not.
No, so if you get,
No, it's two.
if I give, excuse me, I could give a candidate now money, I get a candidate again next year.
But it doesn't count,
So it's per person, per race, pretty
I
much.
think it starts counting in
Per election
January.
cycle.
But it doesn't matter, sometimes they do $25 to several candidates, sometimes it's $12 to a candidate.
But when does it, because it seemed like I remember reading that, something about calendar.
Calendar year.
Calendar year, so you get twice the same candidate.
Yes, it's a calendar year of the election, so it's January 1 to the end of the year, and then you have until the 20th of the next month to get it in. So that's the way we have it set up now.
So essentially, if a person opens a campaign account this year, I can contribute this year, get a refund, next year give again to the same candidate and get a refund again? It's per year? A lot of people already have campaign.
That's a good question.
That's what I was trying to
I
get.
would say yes.
Let's make sure about that.
Just the exact language, section 63, subsection B, a registered elector of the City of Tallahassee may claim a refund equal to the amount of the elector's monetary contributions made in the calendar year to candidates for mayor and city commission of the City of Tallahassee. The maximum refund for an individual is $25. A refund is allowed only if the elector files a form signed under penalty of perjury with the Ethics Board and attaches to the form a copy of an official refund receipt form or forms issued by the candidate's principal campaign committee after each contribution was received. And
But that's in the calendar year.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Essentially, you can give twice to the same candidate and get a refund twice.
I have had this question from a contributor, so I'm willing to pass
Yeah,
on the answer.
the way I look at it, if we open a campaign account now,
Right.
2021,
you give a contribution in
Contribution
2021,
2021.
another refund in 2022.
and I can get another
Press A.
$5 next year and get a refund again.
Exactly.
That's all.
So essentially, somebody can get $50 back in the election cycle.
$25 a year.
It's not per election?
Now, according to that, it says per year.
Show it to me.
Let's make sure about that. Sounds like,
Because I've been reading it, I thought it was, I think, okay. One second. Okay, and see, I think their intent was for it to be calendar year, but that's not what they
yeah,
wrote.
I don't believe in tents. Literal law.
Spoken like a lawyer.
I'll say it, that's what I go.
Yes, sir. Yes. So the answer would be yes.
So essentially, right now, yeah, so somebody can get up to $50 back in this program. Now, the issue is getting somebody to do anything. So,
Right.
what do you need from us? You have our blessings to do anything you need right now.
And I would just say to anybody, if you have anybody you want to recommend in terms of, and I'll get the word out, and you can help me get the word out. I want to reach out to, somewhere out there, I'm sure there's a list of neighborhood associations and nonprofits.
Could you reach out to, as far as directed from the board, can you reach out as far as our elections?
Network.
See how I can work with them, get this program out there. How that goes.
I know the League of Women Voters makes an effort to advertise this as well.
Okay.
And let me just point out that I can't have two people on the board work with this, because if we meet, well, one person can volunteer, and I'm looking down, so I'm not volunteering anybody. Well, one person can volunteer.
And to volunteer to do what? Exactly.
I'm spinning the wheel. One person can volunteer to help me with this.
I'll do that.
Mr. Payne,
Perfect.
volunteers. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
I was gonna say, because not everybody rolls over, this really only applies to 2 or 3 on an average people a year, right? I mean, people running as far as elections
Because you're
go.
only talking about the mayor and city commission member.
So it feels less huge of a task when looking at it that way. If there's 2, I know, the city commission seat for Southwood area is coming back up again. I know that one's coming up, and I know there's a couple people running, but there's usually not 10 people running for each position. If we could even send a letter to their campaign manager and say, hey, this could actually get you more donations, I think they would be like, oh, we didn't really even know that. I mean, if they just ask for $25 donations from people, basically it's nil for people to donate, so why wouldn't they? And if they capitalize on it first, it seems like something that it'd be a no-brainer for a campaign finance person if they really thought about it, because they're on the mode to raise money and every little bit adds up.
You used to be a campaign finance person.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal of this program is to just encourage more people to have skin in the game. And if we could provide some financial incentive to have more people get a seat at the table in the campaign, so it's not just the same contributors every election, that I think is ultimately the goal of the program.
Right.
So,
Any other comments, recommendations, ideas?
No, thank you. This actually, I like stuff like this. This is gonna be fun. It's a challenge, so. It allows us to be creative, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Moving on to agenda item number 10, citywide employee cost of living increase.
Yes, there is a cost of living increase in this year's budget for city employees. And technically, and some people would argue, but Lucy and I are city employees. And in every way, shape, and form, to the extent that I had to take the course and document that I took the course that I wrote, because every city employee had to complete that course.
Yeah, did you get a B?
I did it, I probably did it in record time.
Floyd, I had a hard time passing that.
quite cheap.
And I helped. I hear you.
So, but I had to do, Lucy and I had, everything that every employee has to do, take inclusion training, et cetera, Lucy and I do that. So, and we receive, the charter says that we're gonna be either contract employees or city employees, and it was decided long ago that we're city employees. Nonetheless, and part of it is based on our evaluations, and thank you, we both got 5s on our evaluation, so thank you. So that's not an issue. When I notified them that we had completed the ratings and they were in the system, then I was told that we need to show in the minutes that the board approved the raise. And this is a cost of living raise. It's routine for city employees, and you've never done it before. Never had to do it before, but apparently now, and different boards are requiring that they approve it before the city does anything. And I was contacted by the HR director today because she was trying to figure out how to word this so it wouldn't run into any conflict or get any flack from another board if we didn't do it that way. And I told her I would make it easy and just bring it to this board so you could approve it. And what I'm suggesting is instead, if it's a merit increase, that's a whole different thing, and I'm not gonna ask you for a merit increase, so we're good at that. But cost of living across the board, that should be routine. So what I'm asking is, and John actually wrote a resolution that would basically says that anytime there's a cost of living increase, it doesn't have to come back to the board. It's automatic, just like it is for any other city employee.
Do they have the resolution?
No, they don't have it.
Oh.
Do you want to read it into a minute?
If I could maybe speak to this, because I know I was privy to this prior to Mr. Floyd being here. This, from what I understand, this was never an issue that had to come back to this board. It was just always automatic for the 2 employees. Section 61 authorizes this board to hire staff. Section 2 of the charter says that the ethics officer shall either be a full-time or part-time city employee or an independent contractor. So it's an either-or proposition. Clearly, they're taking out his taxes. He's part of the health insurance. City of Tallahassee has this weird, they don't pay Social Security, they pay a different. And you guys participate in that program, so it's pretty clear they're city employees. So I think for that reason, it's never had to come back to this board for approval. Since 2014, it's always been done every single year automatically. For some reason, I think there's an outside consultant this year that says, well, I need to get approval from this board. So the resolution that is before you today, I could read it word for word or give you the highlights. I kind of just go through the history of the board. Section 61 creates the board and authorizes you to hire staff. Section 2 says the independent ethics officer can be full or part-time employee. Consistently, this board has hired an administrative specialist and an ethics officer that have both served as full-time employees participating in the city's health insurance and retirement programs. The city commission annually votes to provide a cost of living adjustment for all city employees as part of its city budgetary process. And we consider that increase when we adopt our budget annually, so it's not money we need to fund. We've already accounted for that going forward, as this is something we've always done in the past. And I think we wanted to adopt this resolution here that essentially says that we're affirming that the ethics officer and the administrative specialist are both employed by the board as full-time employees of the City of Tallahassee, which is correct. The ethics board intends for the cost of living adjustment that was just adopted for the current fiscal year budget to apply to the 2 city employees that work for this board, and for future cost of living adjustments for those 2 city employees to automatically apply without having to come back to this board. And that's essentially all this resolution does. It's just a document that they could give to this consultant to pass along to HR to get their check done. And it goes back to the beginning of the fiscal year pay period, which is September 25th, for the beginning of the October 1st fiscal year, fiscal year.
Any questions from the board? This matter? Motion to accept the resolution?
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
May I get the vote first, and I'll get this open discussion.
Yeah.
Ms. Costa?
Second.
Mr. Smith, seconds, open for discussion.
I just wanted to say that I think I don't have any, I'm not commenting on the resolution or the entitlement to the COLA. I do think there is some question about whether or not the staff of the Independent Ethics Board are fully city employees, because the city does not have the authority to hire, fire, or discipline either staff. So I don't think it affects your resolution, but I just want to clarify that I don't think that, I think it's a little confusing based on the charter, but I don't think that they are truly city employees for all purposes.
Thank you.
With step 2.
Which might be why it was required to come back.
Thank you. Questions, discussion on our motion to adopt the resolution? No. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd, Mr. Reed. Moving on to agenda item number 12, member discussion, no, sorry. Agenda item number 11, public comment on non-agenda items.
I think we covered all of the,
Public comment?
You got messed up.
and I see something about process of complaints, but I believe you spoke to that.
Would you allow me to speak to that? Because you made the incorrect assumption.
I thought you mentioned the process of complaint.
No, there's another issue to that.
Okay.
That's not on the agenda.
Okay.
What was that original comment? What item was that connected to?
I filed a complaint with the mayor's office, which is a different form of a complaint. There's some complaints that are investigated by city that you all have jurisdiction over,
To which agenda item did your original comment attach?
to the summary report.
Okay.
And that summary report reflects your complaints.
I understand.
Any other comment on non-agenda item?
Yes. This complaint is, I'm bringing back the urgency of now. I don't want it to take so long in order for you all to have clarity of your jurisdiction of place board, IA boards, these type boards, because me being a small businessman who's been or feel I'm locked out of this process, we are now in the middle of a pandemic. To demonstrate to you the importance of ethics and the reason why I'm bringing this to the ethics board so you can see the relevance. Twice, our city commission has announced what should have brought the room down news. We currently have an excess of over $1 billion of revenue, but no one clapped. Because if you don't trust the manager that's guarding the money, it's not a real celebration. And what we are under, trying to move forward, and we have our city manager saying it's going to be no more non-bid contracts. And it's as if those who want ethics is not being heard. And I love this $25 program, but I just don't want it to be a shiny carrot to distract us. That lady that's watching our children in the community centers, she's not stealing golf balls or basketballs or $30. She understands ethics. We have a lack of culture of ethics in our upper management that needs an urgency of response, because I'm a preacher, and they tell us in preacher school, the first time you hear another preacher say, don't do as I say, don't do as I do as I say, that's a red flag. And those things have been confirmed in a federal courthouse. And I'm disappointed that his request is not on this agenda. And I just don't think that this board understands the inequity. You're our last hope. We saw on the 27th, I saw personally, the mindset of ethics of Tallahassee. I saw that personally. And so what I'm saying to you guys, I love you. I appreciate, I'm not criticizing, but there is an urgency of now that we can't get distracted on other, and I don't want to say other little things, when we have a calamity that needs to be solved. And if it would have been nice to have the Whistleblower Act. I'm not the only one that's being punished here. I just gave her a note. We've got some real issues that this board is just not addressing. And I don't see, when the thing about the tickets came out, this board sent a letter. We got a federal indictment. And then not only do we have a federal indictment of a former commissioner, but we have city employees, not the janitor, not the truck driver, but city managers who makes decisions right now over millions of dollars who were strongly implemented in this trial. And the people deserves action. No letter from you.
That's not what we asked for. That's not what we voted for. Thank you.
Thank you. To address the comments that you made that we are not moving with urgency, this board is going to move in a process we think is proper. The recommendation made by Mr. Payne is being reviewed and being discussed and being considered. Something is seen just because it's not here, it's not being considered. We're going to take actions we deem fit for this board. I'm going to rush into situations because we do have a responsibility, we do have a role in this city. Again, any recommendations the city members of the city make, we consider, we look into, we study to exhaustion. We're not simply sitting here and listening. Understand that. And all those who are watching understand that we could consider everything you bring to us seriously. We work hard behind the scenes here.
I'm dying in front of the scene.
No more comments from the public. Thank you very much.
Just responding.
No comments from the public. Thank you very much. I want to thank this board for the service it's done and for what it continues to do. And we'll continue to work with those who are willing to work with us to meet our objectives. We thank you all for their service, for your contributions, and for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Mr. Payne.
I just also wanted to respond to Mr. Sims. I also was initially disappointed that my request wasn't on this month's agenda. I received personal calls from both Mr. Floyd and Mr. Reed explaining why, explaining that they are working hard to get a definitive ruling rather than making a quick snap judgment, which would be very easy to do. I actually appreciate that they're taking the time to take it seriously and to come forth with a ruling that will hold the standard of law that we will depend on.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Any more comments? Mr. Floyd? Moving on to member discussion regarding future meetings. Any discussions from the board? Directors from the board? Ms. Costa moves we adjourn. Ms. Blank second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.